Pisa is a city full of ghosts. It's a place haunted by disgraced nobles, exiled poets, and souls trapped by centuries-old vendettas. And yet, in the 8 years I lived and studied in these cities, I never did see one of them. Which, considering I'm a scaredy cat and I wouldn't have appreciated the meeting, I can only say it was to my good luck. Most of those spirits are tied to the city's darkest history, doomed to wander the streets looking for payback. But there is at least one ghost in the city who stayed behind out of love for Pisa and its inhabitants. Her name was Kinzika de Sismondi. She was part of one of the most important noble families of the city. We don't even really know what she looked like. The only portrait we have of her is actually just a repurposed piece of a random Roman sarcophagus. But to understand why her spirit stayed behind, we need to understand exactly what she was protecting. At the beginning of the 11th century, the Maritime Republic of Pisa was an incredibly wealthy and powerful trade hub and a military powerhouse. But power breeds arrogance. And at the beginning of our story, the fleet, the pride and glory of the city, was somewhere near Calabria, hunting the enemies of the Republic, leaving the city devoid of protection. It was the year of the Lord 1004, and while the rest of Pisa slept peacefully, a young Kinzika decided that a night walk was just the right cure for her insomnia. Now, exactly why she was awake is up for debate. Some versions of the legend say she was just young, it was a warm summer night, and she was looking for a bit of an adventure. Other, more dramatic retellings claim she was actively running away from home to escape an arranged marriage. Whatever the reason, it was a stroke of luck that night she decided to take a stroll around the Arno. As she wandered the quiet riverbanks, peering out into the darkness, she saw some boats coming from the Arno into the city. It was the middle of the night, so they couldn't be mercantile ships. They were pirates, Saracen pirates, exactly those pirates that the fleet had been dispatched to take care of in Calabria. Their goal was simple: slip into the undefended city, lay waste to Pisa, and strip it of its riches. We may never know for sure if Kinzika was a real woman or just a myth, but the threat creeping up the Arno was absolutely real. Those ships belonged to the Saracen pirate Mujahid al-Amiri, a fully documented historical figure. Pisan history paints him as a brute looking for a quick payout. He's a pirate after all, but he was no buccaneer operating outside the law. Piracy in the 11th century was a legitimate economic and military strategy used just about by everyone, Pisa included. It was nothing more than a universally accepted way of crippling commercial rivals and building an empire. In reality, though, Mujahid al-Amiri, or Musetto as the Pisans called him, was likely more educated than most of the people in the city he was about to attack. He began his life as an Eastern European slave, but he was raised in the elite royal courts of Cordoba, mastering military tactics, literature and theology, before founding his own independent maritime empire. Rather than an unwashed rogue with a penchant for petty thieving, he was a sovereign scholar king, leading a formidable state-funded fleet and a massive thorn in the side of the Italian Maritime Republics. In that warm summer night of the year 1004, as the city of Pisa slept soundly, dozens of shadowy galleys rapidly went up the Arno. At the helm of this fleet, wanting to make sure his rival fell by his own hand, stood Mujahid al-Amiri. Or maybe not. While Pisan legends love to point the finger at their ultimate boogeyman, the historical timeline tells a very different story. In the year 1004, Mujahid al-Amiri was still in Spain, trying to extricate himself from the collapse of the Umayyad Caliphate of Cordoba. He wouldn't even know anything about Pisa until a decade later. Who they were wasn't really important to Kinzika. Whatever had driven her out in the quiet streets, insomnia or escape, was instantly forgotten. She knew what those ships in the dark meant. With the entire Pisan war fleet fighting hundreds of kilometers away down in Calabria, the city was completely defenseless. She had to reach the Council of Elders and sound the alarm before those galleys reached the docks. And so she ran from her house in the south quarters, in the south neighborhoods of Pisa, across the bridge you see behind me towards Palazzo della Caravana. She pounded desperately on the heavy wooden doors until the guards finally answered.
Oh God, open it! Help me! They're here! Open, please!
She dragged the Council of Elders from the beds and, still trying to catch her breath, delivered the one piece of news that could save them. The Saracens were in the river. Within minutes, the silence was shattered as the great bells began to toll, violently waking the rest of the unsuspecting city. The pirates had lost their surprise effect, and by the time they docked, they found nothing but an empty town, as the citizens had fled, taking the city's treasures with them. When morning finally broke, not a single drop of blood had been spilled, and the invading fleet had vanished back into the sea. And so it is that, according to the legends, some people claim they still see a ghost of a young lady wandering the streets of the city in the night when the city is apparently in danger. I debated leaving out for once the historical facts because this is such a lovely story of courage and love. But as always, history doesn't care about personal feelings or happy endings. According to the actual 12th century chronicles, Pisa was sacked.
Fuit capta Pisa Saracenis.
This is what the annales tell us. In the end, Kinzika is just a legend, a heroine invented by a city trying to survive the shame of total defeat. But whether she is myth or reality doesn't really matter. If Pisa ever needs her, Kinzika will be there.